All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're looking at day 7 of some training materials for a business analyst certification exam prep course.
Uh-huh.
And I have to say, I'm pretty excited about this one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, this looks like it's going to be super valuable for anyone looking to kind of get into this field.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
So first up, it looks like the morning session was all about use cases and diagrams.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, diagrams, I'll be honest, sometimes they make my eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that you're going to make this interesting for us.
Well, I'll do my best.
All right?
So use cases are really all about, understanding how someone would interact with a system to achieve a goal.
Okay.
Think of it as a recipe for how a piece of software should work.
Gotcha.
It helps bridge the gap between what a business needs and how tech can actually deliver that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then how do diagrams fit into all of this?
Well, diagrams are a visual way to represent those use cases,
Okay.
like a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all sorts of diagrams out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Each with its own purpose. You've
Yeah.
got your business process flows, data flow diagrams,
Okay.
SWOT analogies, and more. Choosing the right diagram is key.
Yeah.
It's like picking the right tool for the job.
Picking the right tool for the job. I like
Yeah.
that. It's all about, picking the right visual,
Yeah,
depending on, who you're talking to and what you're trying to show.
exactly. And you know what? The materials we have actually provide a great example.
Oh,
We're introduced to a material buyer at XYZ Manufacturing.
okay.
They're responsible for, buying the raw materials the company needs to make its products.
Oh, so that sounds like a pretty important job.
Absolutely.
So how does this then tie back to use cases?
Okay, so imagine the material buyer needs to order a specific type of steel.
Mm-hmm.
The use case would map out every single step of that process.
Okay.
From the initial request to checking inventory levels,
Right.
selecting a supplier, placing the order, and finally receiving the steel.
Wow. So like the whole thing.
Yeah, we call this the main flow.
The main flow. Okay.
Yeah.
I could see how that's really useful for like understanding the entire process.
Right.
But what if something goes wrong?
Uh-huh.
Like let's say the preferred supplier is out of stock.
Right. Well, that's where alternate flows and exception flows come in. Those are like plan Bs.
Okay.
What happens if the system encounters a problem or needs to deviate from the main path?
Mm-hmm.
The use case maps out those possibilities too,
Gotcha.
like choosing a different supplier or adjusting the order quantity.
Oh, okay. So it's like anticipating all the bumps in the road
Exactly.
and figuring out how to navigate around them.
Precisely.
Okay. I like that.
And you know what's really cool?
What's that?
The training materials actually link these use cases back to user stories,
Okay.
which are, short descriptions of what a user wants to achieve with the system.
Okay.
So it really shows how understanding user needs is directly translated into how the system should function.
Oh, that's a really neat connection.
Yeah.
It's like it really highlights how user-centric thinking is at the heart of, good business analysis.
Absolutely. And speaking of user-centric, let's move on to the afternoon session,
Okay.
which dives deep into the world of data architecture.
Ooh, data architecture.
Yes.
I'm ready to dive deep.
All right.
But to be honest, that sounds a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Is it as complex as it sounds?
It might sound technical, but at its core, data architecture is about creating a blueprint for how an organization's data is structured, stored, and used.
Okay.
Think of it like the blueprint of a city, but for data.
Okay.
It ensures that the data flows efficiently and supports the needs of the business.
So it's about making sure that, data is organized and accessible so everyone can use it.
Exactly. Now, within data architecture, we have 3 key components: physical, administrative, and design.
Okay, so let's break that down.
All right.
What does each component kind of focus on?
Okay, well, the physical component is all about the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
The actual hardware and infrastructure,
Yeah.
like servers and networks,
Right.
where the data lives.
Okay.
The administrative side deals with the rules and policies around data usage,
Mm-hmm.
like who has access to what and how data privacy is maintained.
Oh, okay. So it's like rules of the road even in a data city.
Exactly.
All right. What about the design component?
Yeah.
What makes that one so special?
Well, the design component is where we connect back to those business needs we talked about earlier.
Okay.
It's about understanding what data is important to the business,
Right.
how it should be organized,
Right.
and how it can be used to support strategic goals.
So it's like the urban planning
Yes.
of our data
A
seeds.
perfect analogy.
Awesome.
And now we come to a concept that often trips people up:
Okay.
data models.
Data models, yeah.
I see it mentioned here in the training materials.
Yeah, that's what I'm a bit fuzzy on.
Uh-huh.
Is it kind of like a map of the data?
You're on the right track.
Okay.
Think of a data model as a visual representation of how data is organized and connected.
Okay.
It helps us understand the different types of data within a system, their attributes, and how they relate to each other.
So if our material buyer at XYZ Manufacturing needs to track information about raw materials, suppliers, and purchase orders,
Right.
a data model would help visualize how all that information kind of fits together.
Precisely. In the case of our material buyer,
Okay.
they might have a raw material entity
Uh-huh.
with attributes like name, cost, and quantity.
Gotcha.
Then a supplier entity with attributes like name, contact information, and location.
Okay. And then like a purchase order entity to
Exactly.
link those two together,
Yes.
showing which materials were ordered from which supplier.
Exactly. And to create these data models, we use something called data model notation.
Data model notation?
It's like a special language for drawing diagrams,
Okay.
with symbols representing entities, attributes, and relationships.
So it's kind of like a flow chart for data.
Yeah, kind of.
The training materials actually provided some sample diagrams. And I have to say, they're surprisingly easy to follow once you kind of get the hang of all the different symbols.
Visualizations can be incredibly powerful for making complex concepts more digestible.
Definitely.
Now, the training materials also touch upon the different ways to model data:
Okay.
conceptual, logical, and physical.
Oh, what are the differences between those?
Think of it as zooming in on our data city.
Okay.
A conceptual model is like a bird's eye view,
Gotcha.
showing the main entities and their relationships at a high level.
Uh-huh.
A logical model gets a bit closer, adding more detail about the attributes and connections between entities.
Okay. And a physical model would then be like street level.
Exactly. It gets down to the nitty-gritty details like data types, storage structures, and even indexing.
Wow. Okay.
The choice of which model to use depends on the purpose and the audience.
So if you were presenting like to executives, you'd probably stick with a conceptual model.
Exactly. But if you're working with database developers, you'll need to get down to the nitty-gritty with a physical model.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
You've taken something that seemed quite abstract, like data architecture, and you've made it surprisingly tangible.
And that's the beauty of good business analysis.
Yeah.
It's about taking complex ideas and making them clear and actionable.
Definitely.
Yeah,
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive already.
it has.
We've gone from mapping out user interactions to, architecting entire data systems
Yeah.
in just one morning session.
And the day is far from over.
I know, I can't wait.
We still got agile development with Scrum to explore.
Yes.
And even a glimpse into the world of Transact SQL or T-SQL.
Now you're talking. Bring on the Agile and the T-SQL.
Okay.
But before we move on, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about what T-SQL is and why it's so important for a business analyst?
All right, so T-SQL is a powerful language that's used to interact with Microsoft SQL Server databases,
Okay.
which are like vast storehouses of information.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to retrieve specific data,
Okay.
perform calculations,
Gotcha.
and even modify data within the database.
So it's not just about designing the data model.
Right.
You also need to know how to work with the data itself.
Exactly. And that's why T-SQL is such a valuable skill for a business analyst.
Okay.
It allows you to get hands-on with data, extract insights, and even automate certain tasks.
It's like having the keys to the data kingdom.
Precisely. And in part 2,
Okay.
we'll explore how our aspiring business analyst started learning this powerful language through some specific Microsoft Learn modules.
Well, I can't wait to dive into that.
Me neither.
So for our listeners, stick around for part 2,
Yes.
where we'll uncover the secrets of T-SQL and explore the exciting world of agile development with Scrum.
Can't wait.
See you soon.
See you then.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Last we left off, we were just about to dive into some Microsoft training interludes that our aspiring business analysts went through.
Right.
And these focused on Transact SQL, or T-SQL for short,
Yeah.
which you explained is the language used to actually work with data that's stored in Microsoft SQL Server databases.
That's right. Yeah, you can think of T-SQL as the tool that lets you unlock the power of all that structured data.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a key to a treasure chest, just filled with insights,
Okay.
just waiting to be discovered.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, whenever I hear database language, my brain starts to go a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, I get that.
Can you break down what someone would actually do with T-SQL?
Absolutely. So imagine our material buyer at XYZ Manufacturing wants to analyze the raw material purchases over the past year.
Okay.
They could use T-SQL to pull data from the database,
Yeah.
filter it down to just steel purchases,
Okay.
calculate the total amount spent, and even identify any trends or anomalies.
So it's not just about looking up data, it's about analyzing it and finding patterns.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, the training materials mention 3 specific Microsoft Learn modules on T-SQL.
Uh-huh.
The first one is Introduction to Transact SQL.
Okay.
This likely covers the basics like how to write simple queries to retrieve data from a table.
Okay, that sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah.
But T-SQL must go beyond just basic retrieval, right?
Oh, absolutely. The second module is Sort and Filter Results in T-SQL,
Okay.
which gets into some more advanced techniques.
Okay.
So imagine having a database table with millions of rows of data.
Mhm.
You need ways to sort that data,
Yeah.
say alphabetically by supplier name,
Right?
and then filter it down to show only purchases made in a specific quarter.
Okay, so it's like a super-powered spreadsheet
Yeah, you could say that.
where you can, slice and dice the data however you need.
Exactly. And things get even more interesting with the third module.
Ooh, tell me more.
Combine multiple tables with joins in T-SQL.
Okay, joins.
This is where you start to see the real power of relational databases.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Alright.
What exactly are joins and why are they so powerful?
Okay, so think back to our data model example.
Mm-hmm.
We had separate entities for raw materials,
Okay.
suppliers, and purchase orders.
Right, yeah.
Joins allow you to connect those tables together based on common attributes,
Okay.
like the supplier idea.
Gotcha.
This means you can pull information from multiple tables at once to get a complete picture of,
Okay.
say, all these steel purchases from a particular supplier.
So it's like putting together the pieces of a puzzle to create a, complete picture of the
A
data.
perfect analogy.
I like it.
And these are just a few examples of what you can do with T-SQL.
Right.
There are functions for calculating statistics,
Uh-huh.
grouping data,
Okay.
and even automating complex data manipulations.
Wow, it sounds incredibly powerful.
It is.
But I have a confession.
Okay.
The training materials don't go into detail about the specific content of these T-SQL modules.
Yeah, that's true.
So based on your expertise, what are some key takeaways our aspiring business analyst might have gleaned from this training?
Well, beyond the technical skills of writing T-SQL queries,
Mm-hmm.
I think a big takeaway is the realization that data is a powerful asset that can be leveraged to drive business decisions.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to have data.
Yeah.
You need to know how to use it effectively.
Right, you got to use it.
Exactly. Another key takeaway is the importance of precision and attention to detail when working with databases.
Okay.
Even a small error in your T-SQL code can have big consequences.
Right.
So you need to be very careful and test your work thoroughly.
It's like being a surgeon operating on the data.
I like that.
You need a steady hand and a clear understanding of the anatomy.
And finally, I think these T-SQL modules would instill a sense of empowerment in our aspiring business analyst.
Okay.
By learning this language, they gain the ability to access and analyze data directly
Yeah.
without relying on others.
It's like they become the data detective, uncovering all the hidden patterns and insights.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the core role of a business analyst,
Okay.
being that bridge between the world of data and the world of business.
I love how everything's connected. We've gone from use cases to data architecture to T-SQL, and it's all building upon itself.
Indeed. And now for our final act,
Okay, hit me.
let's shift gear and explore the world of agile development with Scrum.
Ooh, Agile's one of my favorite topics.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about being adaptable,
Right.
collaborative,
Mm-hmm.
delivering values incrementally.
Absolutely.
Now, our source material mentions 3 primary roles in Scrum:
Okay.
the product owner,
Uh-huh.
the Scrum Master,
Right.
and the development team.
Yep.
I'm curious, of these 3,
Yeah.
which one do you think is the most crucial for a successful Scrum project?
That's a great question.
And why?
It's tempting to say they're all equally important,
Right.
but if I had to choose,
Mhm.
I'd say the product owner plays a particularly critical role.
Interesting. Why is that?
The product owner is the voice of the customer,
Okay.
the champion of the product vision.
Mm-hmm.
They're responsible for making sure the team is building the right product
Okay.
with the right features
Right.
and delivering value to the end user.
Yeah.
Without a strong product owner,
Uh-huh.
the team can easily get lost in the weeds,
Right.
building features nobody needs,
Yeah.
or going down rabbit holes that don't align with the overall business goals.
So they're like the captain of the ship,
Exact.
steering the team in the right direction.
Now, the Scrum Master is also incredibly important,
Okay.
acting as a facilitator and a coach,
Right.
ensuring the team follows the Scrum process and removes any obstacles that get in their way.
So they're like the first mate,
Ah, very apt analogy.
keeping the ship running smoothly.
Yep.
And the crew was tracked.
And of course, we can't forget the development team,
Of course not.
the talented individuals who actually build the product.
Right.
They're the ones who turn the vision into reality.
So they're like the engine room crew,
Yeah.
making sure the ship actually moves forward.
And like a well-oiled engine room, high-performing Scrum team needs more than just individual roles.
Right.
It needs a well-defined process. That's where the Scrum ceremonies come in.
Oh, yes, the ceremonies.
We've got sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective,
Okay.
and the daily Scrum meeting.
Right now, sometimes all those meetings can feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I could see that.
Can you help me understand the purpose of each ceremony
Sure,
and why it's so important to the Scrum process?
absolutely. Let's start with sprint planning.
Okay.
This is where the team gathers to decide what they're going to work on during the next sprint, which is typically a 2-week period.
Okay.
The product owner presents the top priority items from the product backlog,
Okay.
which is a prioritized list of features and requirements.
Right.
The development team then breaks those items down into smaller tasks and estimates the effort involved.
So it's like creating a roadmap for the next 2 weeks,
Exactly.
making sure everyone's on the same page and has a clear understanding of what needs to be done.
And it's not just about assigning tasks.
Okay.
It's about having a shared understanding of what done looks like.
Okay, so that's sprint planning. What about the sprint review?
At the end of each sprint, the team holds a sprint review.
Okay.
This is a chance to demonstrate the working software they've built to the product owner and other stakeholders.
Okay.
It's a time to celebrate achievements,
Uh-huh.
gather feedback,
Right.
and discuss any necessary adjustments to the product backlog based on what's been learned.
So it's not just about showing off. It's about getting valuable feedback
Precisely.
and making sure the product is heading in the right direction.
And then we have the sprint retrospective,
Okay.
which is perhaps my favorite ceremony.
Ooh, tell me why you love retrospectives.
Well, the sprint retrospective is a time for reflection and continuous improvement.
Okay.
The team gets together to discuss what went well during the sprint,
Uh-huh.
what could be improved,
Right.
and what they can do differently next time.
Okay.
It's a safe space, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Learn from mistakes
Yeah.
and identify ways to work more effectively as a team.
It sounds like a valuable opportunity to step back and learn from experience.
Exactly. And finally, we have the daily Scrum meeting,
Okay.
often just a quick 15-minute stand-up.
Right.
This is a chance for the team to sync up,
Uh-huh.
share progress updates,
Right.
and identify any roadblocks or issues that need to be addressed.
So it's a way to stay connected and make sure everyone is moving forward together.
Precisely. And you know what's interesting?
that.
While this training material doesn't explicitly say it,
Okay.
this daily stand-up is actually a really effective way to mitigate risks early on.
Oh, okay.
By checking in frequently,
Yeah.
the team can catch potential problems before they snowball into bigger issues.
That's a great insight.
Yeah.
It really highlights the value of those regular check-ins.
And alongside these ceremonies, we have the Scrum artifacts,
Right.
the product backlog,
Yeah.
which we already mentioned,
Right.
the sprint backlog,
Okay.
and burn down charts.
Okay, what are sprint backlogs and burn down charts all about?
The sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog,
Okay.
containing only those items the team has committed to completing during the current sprint.
Okay.
It's more granular,
All right.
with tasks assigned to individual team members.
Gotcha.
The burn down chart is a visual representation of the work remaining in the sprint,
Mm-hmm.
updated daily.
Okay.
It helps the team track their progress and see if they're on track to meet their goals.
So it's like a visual progress bar for the sprint.
Exactly.
Cool.
And it can be a powerful tool for identifying potential bottlenecks or areas where the team needs to adjust their approach.
This exploration of Scrum has been fascinating.
It has, yeah.
It really highlights how agile methodologies like this can help teams be more adaptable, collaborative,
Right.
and ultimately more successful.
And you know what's really cool?
What's that?
The principles of Scrum can be applied beyond software development.
Oh, okay.
You can use it to manage marketing campaigns, design projects, even personal goals.
Oh, that's food for thought.
Yeah,
This whole deep dive has been packed with insights.
it has.
But I have to admit, I'm starting to feel a little information overload.
Yeah,
Maybe it's time for a quick break before we head into the final part of this episode.
I agree. A short pause might be just what we need.
Okay.
Let's give our listeners a chance to digest all this information and come back refreshed for the grand finale.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back shortly for part 3, where we'll tie everything together and leave you with some thought-provoking questions to ponder.
Looking forward to it.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this business analyst training. We've covered a lot of ground: use cases, data architecture, T-SQL, even agile methodologies like Scrum. It's been a whirlwind tour.
It really has been quite a journey.
Yeah.
But, you know, thinking back on everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how interconnected these concepts are.
Yeah, for sure.
They're not just isolated tools,
Right.
but pieces of a larger puzzle that a business analyst uses to solve real-world problems.
That's a great point. I'm starting to see that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not enough to just understand each concept in isolation.
right.
You need to see how they fit together,
Uh-huh.
how they inform and build upon each other.
Exactly. Let's go back to our material buyer at XYZ Manufacturing.
Okay.
Remember, they're trying to improve the raw material ordering process.
Right.
Now imagine they start by creating a use case diagram to map out the current process,
Okay.
identifying bottlenecks and pain points.
Right. And as they're mapping out the process, they realize that data plays a crucial role.
Right.
This leads them to think about the data architecture.
Uh-huh.
Maybe even design some data models to better understand how information flows through the system.
And as they're brainstorming solutions,
Yeah.
they might realize that an agile approach like Scrum
Right.
would be the perfect way to implement those changes incrementally,
Hmm.
gathering feedback and affecting along the way.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
One insight leads to another,
Uh-huh.
and the business analyst uses all these tools in concert to drive positive change.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And this brings us back to the core value of a business analyst.
Yeah.
They're not just tech experts
Right?
or process gurus.
Yeah.
They're strategic thinkers who bridge the gap between business needs and technological solutions.
They're the translators,
Yeah.
the problem solvers,
Yes.
the architects of change within an organization.
And what's really fascinating is that this training day,
Yeah.
even though it's just a snapshot,
Right.
gives us a glimpse into the dynamic nature of this role.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about memorizing definitions.
Yeah.
It's about developing a mindset, a way of approaching problems,
Right.
and finding creative solutions.
That's a skill that's transferable across industries,
Absolutely.
departments,
Mhm.
even entire careers.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I have a little challenge for you.
Okay, hit me.
Imagine you're tasked with designing a data model
Okay.
for XYZ Manufacturing's raw material purchasing process.
All right.
What entities and relationships would you include?
Okay.
Think about the actors,
Uh-huh.
the action,
Right.
and the information that needs to be captured.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Well, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
I'd probably have entities for material buyer, raw material, supplier, and purchase order.
Excellent. And how would you connect those entities?
The relationships would link them together,
Okay.
showing who orders what, from whom, and at what price.
Okay.
For example, a material buyer would be linked to a purchase order, which would be linked to both raw material and supplier.
You're already thinking like a data modeler. And that's what I love about these deep dives. They spark curiosity,
For sure.
equip you with new concepts,
Definitely.
and empower you to see the world through a different lens.
And for our listeners, whether you're considering a career in business analysis,
Uh-huh.
brushing up on your skills, or just fascinated by the world of data and process improvement,
Yeah.
I encourage you to explore the concepts we've discussed today.
There's a wealth of information out there.
Yeah.
Books, articles, online courses, and even those Microsoft Learn modules we mentioned on T-SQL.
Yeah.
Go forth, be curious, and never stop asking, how can we make this better?
That's a wrap on our deep dive into Day 7 of Business Analyst Training.
It has been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.